Welcome, welcome, welcome to COVID-19 Proves We Need Medicare for All. I am your host, Dr. Sanjeev Sriram, and I am so excited for this episode. We have a very special guest in the Zoom room with us, Queen of the Progressive Caucus, mother of love-filled movements, breaker of chains and BS, first of her name, and you better say it correctly, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. She is the lead sponsor of H.R. 1384, the Medicare for All bill in the House, where all 112 co-sponsors just won re-election, proving the people will rally to leaders who stand up to the insurance companies who have been recklessly profiteering during this pandemic, skyrocketing profits and greed as millions of people struggle with the health consequences and economic devastation of this pandemic. During this recent election, we all know healthcare has weighed heavily on millions of voters. Now that the dust is settling, we still have a handful of House elections left. There's that runoff in Georgia coming up. I'm like many of Medicare for All organizers and activists. We want to know, how do we strategize from here? What do we organize around? How's that battlefield looking? And that's why I'm so excited and honored to talk with Representative Jayapal. Congratulations on your electoral victory, Congresswoman. Would love to hear what's on your mind.
Sanjeev, thank you so much. And thank you to Social Security Works. You all have been just stalwart partners with us as we've built this movement for Medicare for All over a decade or more, with really moving forward in Congress in this last session, with the first forever, hearings on Medicare for All. So I'm really grateful to be here with everyone, and to be true partners in our movement to guarantee healthcare as a human right. And what a coalition we have, what a coalition we've built. More than 30 labor unions, more than 250 economists, countless disability rights, racial justice, and progressive organizations that support H.R. 1384, the Medicare for All Act of 2019. Now, as we continue to struggle through this global pandemic that has already claimed more than 240,000 people in our country, I cannot help but think about how different things would be if we already had Medicare for All. It wouldn't have addressed every barrier and challenge brought forth by COVID-19. I just want to be clear about that. But it is absolutely undeniable that Medicare for All would have strengthened our response and just fundamentally made it easier for people to actually get the necessary services and healthcare and security that they deserve. Every other industrialized country realized long ago that you simply cannot tie healthcare to employment, and that healthcare has to be guaranteed for everyone in order to have a thriving society. And yet, here in the United States, we've had this fragmented, profit-driven, non-system. We shouldn't call it a system because there is no system here in the United States that is healthcare and ties healthcare to employment. That means that nearly 87 million people are uninsured and underinsured even before the pandemic ever hit. That means that nearly 87 million people were actually ill-equipped to access and to pay for the care that they needed if they contracted COVID-19. And then another 12 million became uninsured because they lost their job and they couldn't get on any other healthcare. 27 million people lost their healthcare because they lost their job, but some of them were able to get healthcare through other expensive, complicated systems. 12 million just don't have healthcare during a healthcare crisis simply because they lost their job. Even for people that have health insurance who survived COVID, they are paying $30,000 in surprise medical bills, all the while for-profit insurance companies are taking in record-breaking profits. The chaos with testing and the lack of PPE for our essential workers, the millions of people that have lost healthcare coverage are non-existent problems in other countries that have a single-payer healthcare system. Countries like Canada, South Korea, Taiwan, and Australia. Those countries have 0 to 80 COVID cases per capita, whereas here in the United States, we have 330 cases per capita, and that is rapidly increasing. It's no wonder then that the rest of the country is telling us that People want Medicare for all. Even a Fox News poll that I was watching just days before the election showed 72% of people supported government health care. We had a record turnout of young people, Black and brown people in cities and swing states alike, who showed up and told us that they support not an incremental program, but a transformative vision of America that is inclusive, with a minimum wage that is $15 or a living wage, and healthcare and health justice guaranteed as a human right. Every incumbent, including those in swing districts who co-sponsored Medicare for All, was reelected. And that's why we just can't let up on our fight for Medicare for all in this next Congress. We made tremendous gains in broadening and deepening our coalition, but we still have a lot of work to do with building our national grassroots movement to be even stronger. Don't forget that while we did amazing work in getting 120 co-sponsors on in the last Congress, that's still not that's just over the halfway mark of the Democratic caucus. This year, we elected another 8 progressive members who all support and ran on Medicare for all. So the work that we have to do is to continue to build that public support. We have to counter all the misinformation about Medicare for all that the for-profit healthcare industry is putting out there. And while we've had historic hearings in Congress on Medicare for all, we have to ensure that Medicare for all continues to be a critical part of the legislative conversation within Congress through more hearings, such as the commitment that I received from the Small Business Committee, that they would hold a hearing on what Medicare for all means for small businesses and how to keep small businesses competitive by taking on Medicare for all. We also need to continue gaining more of those co-sponsors across the Democratic caucus and building stronger champions for Medicare for all in caucus. With the Biden administration and a Democratic majority House, we progressives have to recognize that this next Congress is a major opportunity to push forward the legislative groundwork for Medicare for all, while continuing to build the grassroots movement to demand that fundamental shift in our healthcare system. Earlier this year, some of you know that I served as the co-chair at the request of Senator Bernie Sanders, the co-chair of the Unity Task Force on Health Policy. Senator Sanders and I talked about my goal as being to find a path forward between the Medicare for All movement and a Biden administration. We knew that Joe Biden was not going to embrace Medicare for All, but our goal was to try and take some of the foundational concepts of Medicare for All and get them embedded into any Biden platform. And so we actually were able to do that. Through those negotiations with the future Biden administration, we garnered their commitment to many progressive proposals that we will fight for, that preserve as the floor and not the ceiling. I believe that the election results tell us that the American people have given us a mandate to deliver real change this next Congress. Real change means beginning that process of untethering healthcare from jobs by automatically covering anyone who becomes unemployed during this pandemic through Medicare. Real change means providing more people with reliable public health insurance by lowering Medicare's eligibility age to 50 and covering all children. It means tackling drug pricing head on and ensuring that no American is paying more for the same drugs than anyone in any other country. It means at long last providing health coverage for immigrants, including DACA recipients and undocumented immigrants. It means addressing our long-term care crisis by significantly investing in home and community-based services so that people have a choice of having their loved ones receive care at home. Is that enough? Absolutely not. In the wake of the devastation of COVID-19, it is clearer than ever that we cannot let up until we have a single-payer Medicare for all system. But achieving these critical steps is possible and crucial towards our fight to win Medicare for all right now. Our accomplishments this year can show that we can do this. We can achieve real progressive steps that begin the transformation of our healthcare system, as long as every single person across America stands with us to organize, to fight, and to demand healthcare as a human right. So thank you to everyone on this call, to Social Security Works, to my friend Sanjeev, Dr. Sriram, for the work that you have done. And thank you for staying in this fight to make healthcare for all a reality.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. I really appreciate this. I know that, COVID-19 relief is going to be a major priority for the incoming Congress in January. And when I look at, what all my patients and the families need, many of the things that you're talking about, where just getting that peace of mind, just knowing that coverage should not be connected to employment. I'm really curious about how are we going to make sure that those are prioritized in COVID relief? Because to be quite honest, like my patients are simply not going to get enough relief by just having COBRA be subsidized. They really need the kind of coverage that is going to deliver true peace of mind. So how does the Progressive Caucus plan to make that a priority in COVID relief this coming January when everyone's sworn in?
Well, as you may know, I took the very difficult decision to vote against the first HEROES Act because I felt that a really bold proposal had to address both the economic uncertainty that people were facing, and I had the Paycheck Recovery Act to do that, and had to address healthcare. And I just didn't feel that COBRA subsidies was the way to go about that. And so we really have yet to expand public health insurance to cover the significant gaps that you're talking about that rose, with this massive rise in unemployment and health insurance loss. COBRA subsidies, I will tell you, are becoming even less viable, not only because they're extremely expensive, but since so many people have remained in unemployment for several months, the COBRA option isn't even available to them anymore. And so that's actually something that I think is going to push other solutions forward. We've seen that millions, even with COBRA, are without any insurance because they don't qualify for Medicaid and they can't afford COBRA or a marketplace plan. And I think people are beginning to see that. It's why I introduced the Medicare Crisis Program, so that if someone does become unemployed, they can enroll themselves and their household into Medicare. I also introduced the Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act with Senator Sanders in order to cover medical costs for all uninsured and underinsured during the pandemic. I think the private insurance industry has shown us that they're not going to be reliable providers of health protection, not even during a pandemic. And it's why we just have to pass efforts that expand public health insurance instead of investing in these expensive for-profit health insurance plans that don't provide comprehensive coverage. The magnitude of the situation we're in some ways, I think, is pushing people to understand that what we did before was not sufficient. We've got to do more. We've got to do it differently. And by the way, we also, other progressive priorities for a relief package include extending the unemployment insurance, for everybody, getting stimulus checks in people's pockets, canceling student debt loans that are out there, making sure that we get mortgage and rent relief to people. I mean, these are critically important pieces as well, because as you very well know from all of your time providing healthcare for people, if people don't have income, unfortunately, healthcare is one of the first things to go. And they won't go get not just preventive care, but even curative care becomes an impossibility. And so we got to make sure we get money in people's pockets and that we ensure their healthcare.
Yeah. Another big concern that I have, Congresswoman, is about the cost of the vaccine. As you know, Pfizer and Moderna have both, have come out with these vaccines that are proving themselves effective. We're learning more about the safety of the vaccine. The thing that worries me the most is, are we going to stand up to these mega corporations and tell them that the American taxpayer has already funded enough of the research to make these vaccines possible? And we really should not be expecting patients to pay again when it comes time to get vaccinated against COVID-19. How do we make that also part of the relief package?
Well, that absolutely will be. I think that there's wide agreement that the vaccine will be provided free to everyone. The challenge, of course, as you know, is how does that get rolled out? Who gets it first? How do we make sure that if you're just wealthy and you can pay for a vaccine, that you don't get that dose, that it goes to essential workers, frontline workers, healthcare professionals, et cetera, as well as the most vulnerable, folks of color who are disproportionately burdened, seniors. And so I worry less about the vaccine in this particular moment. And I worry more about how the pharmaceutical industry will try to say that we can't do anything to cut overall drug prices. That needs to be a critical priority of ours. As you know, it's in the Medicare for All bill to have compulsory licensing if we can't get drug companies to negotiate. And so I think that we have to fight back against drug companies' attempts to say that the reason they were able to produce the vaccine is because, they had all these profits. No, we all know that the R&D is provided, as you said, by the federal government for every one of these things, from insulin to this COVID-19 vaccine. And yet the taxpayer who funds all of that research doesn't get any return on their investment, if you want to put it into pure capitalistic terms. So why should these drug companies be able to, make billions of dollars in profits while grandma is sitting at her table and cutting her little pills in half because she can't afford the whole prescription? That's just wrong. And every time they raise their R&D costs, we should raise how much money those CEOs make. We should raise how much money goes into marketing of these drugs. We should raise all the ways in which pharmaceutical companies continue to rake in profits while people can't afford insulin or any other drug. And we just shouldn't allow them to get away with that, because I fear that we will get the vaccine provided for free, at least initially, and then we're going to have to fight to continue it in all the future strains. But I just don't want that to become, a refrain for why pharmaceutical companies are so great and need to continue to make all those profits. We have lots of research that shows those profits don't go into R&D. It wouldn't affect R&D because most of that R&D is provided by us anyway, but it goes into the pockets of, the top management and
Right.
a very limited set of stockholders, perhaps.
Right. Well, Congresswoman, I know that your time is pretty strained this evening, but thank you so much for joining us. And as always, learning from you is always it's inspiring. It gets us all fired up. We're excited to move on to this next chapter of the Medicare for All fight, and we are so grateful for your leadership and for always having some inspiring and encouraging words for us. Thank you so much for joining us, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much. And, don't forget, people, these things take time because they are big ideas, but we would never want to be pushing just small ideas that don't really make a difference. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone. That was Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal from the Progressive Caucus in the House, lead sponsor of HR 1384, the Medicare for All bill. Just really thank you so much to her and her office for coordinating everything very quickly to be on this episode of COVID-19 Proves We Need Medicare for All. And, as the Congresswoman was saying, these are big ideas whose time has come. And I was really just amazed by that Fox News exit poll that she was referring to. I think Fox News thought that they were going to get to own a lot of the left and a lot of health justice activists with this question about should the government have a public insurance option for healthcare, and should it be government run? And overwhelmingly 72% of exit poll voters said that they totally support that. And I think that this pandemic has just reinforced what we all know, that the private insurance industry is not a good faith player in healthcare. And we have arrived at the need for Medicare for All now more than ever. One of the big pushbacks that we've heard post-election is that these ideas are pushing too much too soon, and that we should really, be more careful and to wait for our time and to take it slow. And I can't help but think about the number of times that people who look like me, people of color who made my existence possible were probably told the same thing about take it slow. It's, your time will come. Now is not a great moment. And to push through that and to actually question and those comfort zones of the American public, to build this space, to actually make it so that dignity is not such a controversy, but is actually a matter of fact, is actually part of how we are going to be as Americans and as a country. And I feel that we can do that with Medicare for All as well. It's time for us to assert our values. When, I still don't know what the public option is going to be. I think that it's been an under scrutinized term in this entire election process. But as we learn more about it, it's time to actually ask, what is this public option, and will it really be public? Is it going to be yet another cash cow for the insurance industry, or is this going to be something that people can rely on when it comes to getting health care? We all know that traditional Medicare is in desperate need of major upgrades, and we need to cover dental, vision, hearing, and so much more when it comes to traditional Medicare is in need of upgrades. And if we make those upgrades, why can we not make that also the public option for people? Why can we not expand that to cover people? And if it's going to be the public option, why not just make that the option? What value are we getting from having a private health insurance industry that has made it abundantly clear during a pandemic that profits are their priority, not patients? And so I'm excited about this moment in our movement, because this is a time for us to push our values, to build our movement, and to encourage more people to join the fight for healthcare as a human right. And so I'm so excited and grateful to Congresswoman Jayapal for joining us this evening. And I wanted to make a quick plug for another event that's going on. And in fact, that's actually why Congresswoman had to leave just a little bit sooner than we would have probably liked. But she's going to be on another fantastic program with our dear friend and amazing comrade in arms, Wendell Potter, over at the Center for Health and Democracy. If you go to centerforhealthanddemocracy.org, you can register for an event that is starting in literally just a few minutes, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He's going to be talking with Congresswoman Jayapal, Congresswoman Katie Porter, and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about this very topic, about Medicare for All, and where do we go from here now that the election season is winding down. And I'm looking forward to that talk. Again, if you, I think all of us should log on and support. It's at the Center for Health and Democracy.org. And it's going to be a fantastic event. I'm really looking forward to it and appreciate everyone joining us for this special episode of COVID-19 Proves We Need Medicare for All. Until we can meet again, please do your 3 W's. Wash your hands, wear a mask, watch your distance. Be well, look after each other, and thank you so much for joining us. Good night.